All right, we're back with episode 5 of the Feel for the Game podcast. I'm Wilkes White, and I'm here with Landon. So we are going to get into our playoff predictions, and we're going to go ahead and start with mine. I'm going to start with my first matchup. I've got the 12 seed as UNLV against Georgia, the 5 seed in the first round. So the reason why I picked UNLV to be the outlier group of 5 team for the playoff, I think they've got a lot of transfers coming in that I like. They've got Anthony Calandria from Virginia at quarterback, and they've also got Alex Orji from Michigan at quarterback. They're currently in a quarterback battle. Starter has not been announced, but it looks like they're both going to get to play. They've hired Dan Mullen as their head coach, which I think is really exciting. He's been coaching college football for a while. What year did he leave state? Do you remember?
It was after the 2017 season.
Okay,
Took
yeah.
the Florida job after that.
Yep, I remember that. Okay. Yeah, so it's been a while since he's been. I know he coached at Florida after that, but it's been a while since he's been coaching since the Florida job. So it'll be interesting to see how he kind of utilizes the transfer portal. I know they had a couple key additions. They kind of have taken on this persona of picking up guys that have not really stuck anywhere, like high profile recruits that maybe flopped a couple places or got into some trouble. They've started taking on those transfers, and that can be a pretty risky play. I don't know if that'll pay off for them, but they've got a really easy schedule. I think that you highlighted earlier when we were kind of preparing for this that Colorado State could be a slip up game for them if Colorado State ends up playing the kind of football they might be capable of this season. They've got UCLA. I think Nico Maliava is going to be really good for them this year. I think UCLA is going to be a better football team. I don't see UNLV winning that game, but I think I have them only losing to UCLA. I'll have them probably as a 1 to 2 loss conference champion, finishing in the bottom of the top 25. So yeah, got them playing Georgia. Georgia's my 5 seed. I have them losing to Alabama in the SEC championship game, but getting in as a 2 loss team. So I'm going to take Georgia over UNLV in the first round. Second matchup, I've got Texas and Notre Dame. I'm really excited if this were to be a matchup. I think this could be really cool. I haven't seen these two teams play before, so two really high profile teams. I have them finishing a little lower than most people. I think Texas is going to have a really tough schedule this year, playing Florida and playing Georgia. I mean, they're going to be really tough games on their schedule. I just don't see Texas being able to win 11 to 12 games. So I think they'll probably lose two. I have them losing three, but I feel more comfortable with them losing 2 games. Either way, I think they'll have quality wins, and I think they're going to get really good quarterback play from Arch Manning, and I think that'll put them at the 9 seed, playing against number 8 Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's got a little bit harder schedule this season, but I have them dropping at least 1 or 2 games. I think there's some sneaky games on that schedule. You got Texas A&M and Arkansas early. USC will probably give them trouble later. They got Miami first game, so that's 4 losable games already that they usually wouldn't have to play. So I'll have Notre Dame probably getting with a 1 or 2 losses as the 8 seed, and I have Texas beating Notre Dame in that first round game to move on. So this next first round game is probably the one I think would be the most interesting. So I have Georgia Tech making it as the 11th seed. So that'd be the first team in at the bottom. So like UNLV is our 12 seed. They get in as the fifth conference championship from the group of five. But Georgia Tech would be the first team at the bottom that would get in. I think they probably lose 2 games. They play Clemson. I don't have them winning that game. And then there's some other games on that schedule I think could be kind of tough for them. But I feel pretty confident that they can win at least 9 or 10 games this season. I'm very high on Georgia Tech. I love Haynes King. I think Eric Rivers is going to be a really solid addition at wide receiver. Jamal Haynes is a stud running back. If they can put together a cohesive defense this year and stop the run a little bit better, I think that they could be really good. Their schedule is somewhat manageable outside of their 2 or 3 tougher games. And then they play in this game Oklahoma, as I'm projecting. I think Oklahoma's going to have a really solid season. I have them as the 6 seed here. I think this is probably a little over ambitious, but I'm looking at the other teams in the SEC, and I feel like Oklahoma has such a high upside.
You got 10-win Oklahoma?
Yeah, so I have them at 10-2. They would lose out as a tiebreaker to Alabama. So that's how Alabama would make it to the SEC championship game over them, and then I have them beating Georgia to move on. But yeah, so I've got Oklahoma in. I really like Oklahoma a lot. I love John Mateer. I like Deion Burks a lot. I think Jaden Ott's a great transfer addition at running back. I think their defense is going to be probably one of the top defenses in the country. I think that combination of offensive threat with their defensive pass rush and the secondary, the veterans they've got back there, that's going to make it really hard for these SEC teams to have some holes. Whether it's like the offensive line, which will cause real issues, like an LSU, like they've got very much unknown positions on the offensive line. They don't really have a lot of known commodities there. So I could see a team like Oklahoma that doesn't have very many holes on their team as far as known commodities going in and playing LSU and exposing a weakness like that. I think this team has so many different attack angles that they can hit you with that make them a threat in just about any matchup. They can find a way to exploit you. We're going to have to see that play out on the field. This is a new team with some veterans, but adding a lot of transfers with some great skill. We'll see if they can be cohesive there. I have them beating Georgia Tech and moving on to play in the quarterfinals. My last matchup in the first round is Arizona State versus Oregon. So I have Arizona State as the Big 12 champion, making it in as the 10 seed. I really like what they've got there. I think they return the most production in the entire country, and it's not really that close. With the team they had last year, I think they're only going to get better. I'm really excited to see what Sam Levitt does this year. I think the passing game is going to be a focal point for them. I think they're really going to pursue throwing the ball more because they don't have Cam Scatterbo anymore.
They're going to feed Jordan Tyson this year.
Yeah, I think Jordan
Keep
Tyson
him
and
healthy.
Xavier Gilroy are going to get fed. I think that offense is going to absolutely cook in the Big 12. It's just can their defense with the returning production hold some of these high-powered Big 12 offenses into lower scoring games? Can they go in and win in a shootout? I think they absolutely can, but I think their defense will be what probably closes those games out for them.
Well, what happens to them after State beats them?
I think I have them only losing to Mississippi State.
You have that being their only loss of the
I
season?
have that being their only loss of the season. I think that Mississippi State is going to find a little bit of fire early with that win. I don't think it's going to carry on for very long, but I just don't see Mississippi State being held down for much longer. I think they're going to have a lot of unknown talent that's going to start showing up early. They might get a scare from Southern Miss in week 1, but I feel pretty confident that there's a solid chance they can beat Arizona State. I wouldn't bet on this game. I'm looking at upsets in the college football season, and that one screams upset. It's an SEC team playing at home against possibly an overhyped Big 12 champion that had volatility to go from like a 3 or 4 win team all the way to a 10-11 win team the next season. So there's a chance Arizona State may not be as good as they were last year. Cam Scatterbo could be too big of a loss to overcome. I don't know that it will be. I think they replaced a lot of positions in the transfer.
They get a good dude from Army, I think it was.
Yeah, the running back from Army.
Like, it might have been Navy, Army, Navy, one of those.
I think it was Army. It was Army. But yeah, I think that they got a couple guys at running back that could end up being good. They may do a 3-man rotation and be able to kind of wear you down with some depth at that position. But I have them losing to Mississippi State. I'm not confident in that. Wouldn't bet on it. Probably won't happen, but I think it could be really interesting to see how that game plays out. I know it's going to be competitive. So I have them playing number 7, Oregon. I think Oregon gets in with 2 losses. I have them losing to Penn State. I think I might have them losing to either USC or Iowa. I think they play at Iowa. I think that'll be a tough game for Oregon. If they can't get Dante Moore to play with the offensive output that they need to win that game, I feel very strongly that could be a tough game for a young quarterback in Dante Moore with turnovers, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on him in that game at Iowa. I see that being a slip-up game for sure. So 2-loss Oregon gets in, plays Arizona State. I think I'm going to take Arizona State to win that matchup. But got more returning production. I think an early slip up to Mississippi State is going to get them to kind of lock in a little bit more than they would have. I think you could pick this team to go 12-0. There's a real possibility they could, but I think this is such a new thing for Arizona State. They're probably gonna need to slip up. Some teams just need to lose a game early to kind of get into that mid to late season grind. Like I remember Ohio State lost to Virginia Tech in 2014 to open the season, ended up winning the national championship with like their third string quarterback Cardell Jones. Like it happens. Like teams slip up early to teams that they shouldn't really lose to. But an away SEC team with a second-year head coach with a high-powered offense is a losable game to anybody. I don't care who you are. Alabama could play at Mississippi State, and there's always a chance they could lose. And I feel like a Big 12 team definitely has a chance to lose that game. But I'm high on Arizona State this year, and despite having them losing that game, I have them beating Oregon and moving on to play in the quarterfinals. So, first round of the quarterfinals, I have Georgia playing Penn State at number 4. I'm picking Georgia to win this game. but I definitely could see Penn State winning. I feel like this would open at like maybe an even line. Like this game would be really close with where I have these teams. I have them ranked at 5-4. Penn State, I have them losing in the conference championship game. So they would be a two-loss conference championship loser at 4. I think there's going to be a lot of teams that have two losses up here this year. I don't know if it's going to be a ton, but I have teams like Penn State maybe losing some close
You had
games.
them losing to Ohio State twice.
So I have them losing to Ohio State and then getting to the conference championship and losing again. I think it's gonna happen again.
It's
I
gonna
think
keep
they're gonna
on
have the Ohio
same thing
State
again, and then
curse.
lose to Georgia, and then people are gonna be at James Franklin's throat again.
But they could lose all three of those games by one score. There's a real possibility. I think these teams are going to be very even. I think Georgia's wide receiver room is massively slept on. They got Noah Thomas from Texas A&M, 6'6", big outside threat. They've also got Zachariah Branch from USC, absolute route demon. He's got great speed. He's got good hands. He's a good return specialist. That guy's going to be a beast for them. They haven't had receivers like this in a while. So I feel like this Georgia team, if they get the best out of Gunnar Stockton, is going to be really hard to beat. So have Georgia winning against Penn State in the first game of the quarterfinals to move on to the semis. Texas at Alabama, quarterfinals, second game. I have Alabama winning this game. And I'm pretty high on Alabama this year. I think this is usually when Alabama sneaks up on people. They're being massively slept on. They've got a third-year quarterback who's finally getting his chance to start. It just smells to me like Alabama's going to find what they haven't had the past 2 years. Kind of since Nick Saban left, they've kind of been in that lull. I just don't see Kalen DeBoer doing worse than he did last year. And I definitely think this team is going to be better off without Jalen Milroe because they're going to be really able to tap into that passing offense with Kalen DeBoer. I just don't think they were really able to do that last year. So hopefully they can overcome the injury to Jam Miller, their starting running back. I know he's supposed to be out for a couple weeks. I don't think that's going to hurt him against Florida State, but
No,
I think there's definitely a chance that this Alabama team could be really solid. I actually have them at number one going into this matchup. So I have them beating Texas, moving on to the semifinal. Third matchup, I've got Oklahoma playing Clemson. I have Oklahoma winning this game. Most people have Clemson going to either the national championship or the semifinals at least. I think Clemson's definitely good enough to get there. Absolutely not counting it out. I think this Oklahoma team is going to be so well rounded by late season. If they cannot drop a couple of those close games and finish out with 1 to 2 losses, I think they'll at least make it to the semis. And I have them beating Clemson. Clemson's gonna have a great offense. They profile very similarly to Oklahoma, returning a lot of talent. They haven't dipped into the transfer portal near as much, but they've got a great quarterback going for the Heisman Trophy. They've got great receivers. They've got a good defensive line. I think that those are the staples of a championship team. And both these teams have it, but since they're both playing each other in the quarterfinals, I got to pick one. So I think Oklahoma's going to be the better overall team with a better defense, and I have them winning that matchup. I've got Arizona State playing Ohio State in the last matchup of the quarterfinals. I've got Ohio State winning. I just don't think that Arizona State's going to be able to keep up talent wise. I think that's pretty straightforward. I like Arizona State a lot, but it's just going to come down to who has the better pedigree as a team. Ohio State absolutely is going to be more talented at this point in the season. I think Julian Sam with 13 games, 14 games under his belt, is probably going to be playing some pretty good football by now. So, have Ohio State winning that game. Now on to the semis. I've got Georgia and Alabama rematching from the SEC championship game. So this would be their
their
third
third
time
matchup
playing.
of the year.
Which
Yeah,
have we seen that yet?
I'm not sure that we have.
In our dynasty, we've had this happen a couple
Oh, you've had it happen twice already.
I absolutely hate playing Notre Dame in my dynasty because every time I play them, the outcome is different. I play them at the beginning of the season, I beat them by multiple touchdowns, and then the next game I play them, it's an overtime field goal game winner. I either win or lose. It's just something crazy every time. But I think that is just proven to me that there are so many scenarios if you simulate it the right way where a team is going to play another team 3 times. If you've got the two top echelon teams in the conference playing each other reg season, making it to the conference championship, they split games and then make it to the playoffs and win their games and play again. I think there's a real possibility that Georgia and Alabama are two of probably the best teams in the entire country again this year. Um, I really like both these teams, but I'm having Alabama winning this game. I think that Alabama is just going to be a notch better than Georgia. I think I like Alabama's quarterback situation a little bit better. I don't know how I feel about Gunnar Stockton right now. And with how Georgia's been running the ball, unless they can completely flip that around from last year, I think Alabama's going to be a more well-rounded team with a lot more firepower at wide receiver. So got Alabama moving on to the national championship. My other semifinal game, I have Oklahoma playing Ohio State. I really like this matchup. I think if we see this, whether it's in the first, second, or third round of the playoff, or even the national championship, I think these two teams will probably end up playing the game of the year if they play each other. I think this would be the most exciting game to watch. I think you've got the most NFL players or Heisman caliber players on the field in these two teams playing each other. I would love to see John Mateer play Julian Sayin and see Jeremiah Smith go up against that Oklahoma defense. I think that would be really exciting. Regardless, I have Ohio State winning this game. I just feel like Ohio State is just going to be on a different playing field this year than some of these other teams. They're really trying to gel the team together at the last second. Like Oklahoma's going to be really talented and they're going to win a lot of good games. When it comes down to it, they just haven't gelled together from start to finish like this Ohio State team has. Ohio State's been recruiting these 4 and 5 stars and developing them for years, and now they're redshirt sophomores, redshirt juniors. They're getting on the field and starting, and they've had time under this offense and scheme. Having a new defensive coordinator might set them back a little bit, but I just feel like the talent on this team is going to be so much better as far as time spent under the coaching staff, and they're going to be very well developed and prepared for this game. So I have Ohio State winning. National championship game, I've got Alabama playing Ohio State. We haven't seen this game since 2014, right? When they played in I think it was the semifinal game.
Yeah, that was the Zeke game.
That was the Zeke game. Real college football fans will remember Zeke's touchdown run against Alabama in that playoff game. That was a moment.
I think that was their last matchup, though.
I think that's the last time they played. I want to see these two teams play again. Kalen DeBoer versus Ryan Day, I think would be an awesome headline. I mean, I have them as the number one and number two teams. I don't know where they'll be ranked if they were to play each other, but regardless, I think these are two probably of the best teams in the entire country by this point of the season. I think that college football this year has a chance to be extremely volatile across the board. We've talked about it with the Big 12, but I think across the board it could be extremely volatile. So the chances of the number one and the number two team playing each other in the national championship is usually a pretty good bet. Like it's not something you cash out on every time, but it's a good bet. I still think that there's a chance a sleeper team like Oklahoma or Arizona State or maybe a rising Texas team will make it to the national championship instead of one of these teams. But these are the teams I feel the most confident about going into this season, and I think have a lot of depth. It's just going to be really hard for these other teams that are gelling together transfer portal classes like Oklahoma to really be competitive with long term into the fourth quarter when it really gets down to those last couple of drives. I feel like these teams are going to pull away. But that's my playoff. I've got Alabama as the national champion. It's week 0 starting this weekend. So in week 1 or week 2, I may feel completely different about every single team on this entire playoff bracket that I have filled out. But as of right now, these are my week 0 playoff predictions. Landon, what you got?
All right, so my first game, I have the 12 seed Tulane Green Wave going to Clemson. Tulane, I have them going 11-2 and winning the American. And for Clemson, I believe I have them going 11-2 as well. I think Tulane could play competitive football with Clemson for maybe a couple quarters, but at the end of the day, talent just too much on Clemson. Pretty much their whole team from last year comes back. But I do have some concerns about Clemson going forward in this playoff after winning this because everybody's been talking about how they've returned so many players, but this team last year was not great. And they really just weren't. I mean, people were talking about how overrated they were all year, and even though they made it to the playoffs, I don't know how it's going to be with Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, they lost 4 games. Like it, you would think they only lost 1 or 2 after the playoffs with how people are treating them right now, but they lost 4 games last year.
And they're hyping this up like it's a Clemson of old.
Yeah, and they could have lost to Pitt too. They only won by 4.
They won a bunch of games close, and they should have probably lost to SMU too.
Yeah, absolutely a possibility.
But I do have them getting past Tulane in this first game. In my next game, I have 8-seeded Alabama hosting Big 12 champion and 9-seed Baylor. I have Alabama going 10-2, and I don't think I have them in the SEC. No, I don't have them in the SEC championship. And then I have Baylor, of course, going 10-2 and winning the Big 12. This really sucks for Baylor. Bama far more talented. Baylor is going to be a good team. Obviously, I'm picking them to win the Big 12, but Alabama's going to be too much. Expect a bounce back season from the Crimson Tide this year, and they probably win this game relatively comfortably at home. The next game, Brian Kelly goes back to Notre Dame, LSU versus Notre Dame in the 6-11 game. This could be a really fun one. LSU probably going to have an explosive offense, good passing game, going against a really tough defense in Notre Dame. But I do have Notre Dame prevailing here. LSU fan base, absolute shambles after this game. Brian Kelly losing to his old school.
As much as I would love to see that happen, I don't even want LSU to make the playoffs so that that could happen. But if they did, that's best case scenario for me. So
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
And I do have LSU slipping in at 9-3 with a good enough resume. 9-3, 6-2 in the SEC. With that non-conference loss being to Clemson. Notre Dame, I have them going 11-1 with that one loss being at Pittsburgh late in the season. So upset pick there. But I do think they get past every other game on that schedule and get past LSU here. Would be a close game here, but I do like Notre Dame in this matchup. And then in the 10-7, I have Oklahoma going on the road to Oregon. Oklahoma, another 9-3 team with a good enough resume that I see getting in here. And then Oregon 10-2. And I do actually have Oklahoma going on the road and pulling off the upset. I really like the potential of this Oklahoma team. Well-rounded squad. Oregon's still got some questions. Dante Moore is not a proven commodity yet. I do think we'll have a good season, but Oklahoma, I think, will be the more polished team coming into this matchup. I think their defense overwhelms Oregon's offense and Dante Moore, and I think Oklahoma pulls up this upset. So going back to the other side of the bracket, I have Clemson taking on Penn State. And finally, I do think Penn State wins a big game. I think they beat Clemson here. Clemson, I feel like I'm going to feel like they're overrated all season. And even beating LSU, I feel like I'm going to watch them and believe that. And with Penn State being the team that always chokes games, playing in a big matchup here, I think this is a good opportunity for them to break that, even if it might be a little bit, in my eyes, not 100% doing that, since I think Clemson's going to be a little overrated. But I do think they get past here, get back to the semifinals again to face the winner of Alabama and Texas. Texas being the 1 seed SEC champion, 12-1, and I do actually have Alabama taking them down to get to the semifinals. I think Texas is going to be a really good team. Obviously, picking them to win the SEC, but I think Bama honestly is going to go on a heater in the playoffs. I think I said I had them at 10-2. I think they could be similar to Ohio State. They kind of feel like that to me this year. A team that in the 14 playoff would not have made it, but they get their chance in the 12 and they just get hot and just start putting wins together. And I think this is the second one that they'll get here against Texas. And that's no indictment on Texas, not being great or anything. I just think Bama's going to be a hot team in this playoff. Next, going over to 3-seeded SEC runner-up Georgia versus Notre Dame. Rematch from last year. That was a rough game for Georgia for most of that. I think they kind of came back at the end of that a little bit, didn't they?
I think it made it a little closer than it looked, but Notre Dame was rushing their offense. They had a foothold on their offense pretty much the whole game.
Yeah, I think
Georgia couldn't do anything.
I think it was a 27-17 final or something like that. But I think Georgia gets revenge this year. I trust in this Bulldog team. I think the run game is going to improve this year. And just the culture at Georgia and the talent on the roster. I believe in Kirby Smart, and I think they're going to have a much better season than last year, and they'll win this game. So next up, 2-seed Ohio State, Big Ten champion versus Oklahoma. I really like this Oklahoma team, obviously, to have them win a playoff game on the road, but Ohio State too talented. I think they just win off of that. I think Julian Sands going to be rolling by this time. I think this team is going to be ready to go for this one, and they'll just overwhelm Oklahoma with all the talent on that squad, especially just it being in the playoffs, the stakes. I feel like the talent will come out similar to last year, and they'll pick up a win against the Sooners. So going to the other side, semifinal, Penn State versus Alabama. Not a lot to say here. Penn State, I think this is the game where they choke. I honestly would predict Bama to probably win this one by 2 touchdowns or more.
Yeah, I like Bama in that matchup. A theoretical matchup with Bama playing Penn State. I just don't see Drew Aller being able to put up big numbers against the Alabama defense. It's going to be as good as this one is.
Yeah.
I really do feel good about Alabama's defense this year. I just don't think Penn State's receivers are going to be able to match up man to man with Alabama's defensive backs. Pass rush and linebacking core, front seven from Alabama is just going to be really, really good. They're going to be stingy. And I've seen Drew Aller not perform really well in these big games. He's just coming up short. And Penn State has all the things necessary to allow him to finally step ahead and start putting up big numbers against those teams. But I just don't see him getting it done against Alabama. Maybe
Yeah.
they get it done in their first round game or their second round game, but when they get to that Alabama game, it's not going to happen.
This could be a classic Drew Aller 120 passing yards game where he throws to 0 wide receivers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what happened to him against Notre Dame, right? I think they only. Oh no, maybe it was the other way
He
around.
didn't throw one pass to or complete a pass to a wide receiver.
Yeah, he did. It
Yeah,
was all tight ends and
crazy.
running backs. So I could see that being a possibility for sure.
Yeah, so I think Bama in this hypothetical matchup gets past Penn State pretty easily. And then on the other side, Georgia versus Ohio State. I do have Georgia taking this one. I believe in them this year. That's nothing on Ohio State not being great. I think they could be a great team this year, maybe even better than last year. But I just really believe in Georgia. That would put us with the Bama Georgia National Championship. I believe that'd be like the third one maybe in the playoff era, maybe even fourth matchup.
I think this would be the third because they had the Jake Fromm game where they played. I think that was when Tua threw the touchdown to Devontae Smith. And then they had the Bryce Young game where Bryce Young threw the pick six and they lost. So I think they're even. They've split 1-1 in Natties. But this would be really neat if they played again. I'm sure nobody wants to see that, but like honestly, I know Ole Miss is not going to make a national championship run this season, so my team's not going to be in it. I would not mind watching the two other best teams in the country make it to the Natty and play each other. I think that would be sick. But yeah, that, that's going to be a good match if they end up playing.
So Georgia Bama, I'm taking Georgia in this game to win the national championship. I feel like people are a little down on them after last year and that sad playoff exit, and I think they come roaring back. I know the offensive line is the big concern, and they really didn't do a ton in the portal to address that. But Kirby believes in his guys on the offensive line, and so do I.
I like that. Okay, do you know if Matt Luke is still the offensive line coach for Georgia? So I know he was there for a little bit. I think he won a national championship in 23 with them when they played TCU. But I don't know if he's still there. For those of you who don't remember Matt Luke,
He's at
he was.
Clemson now.
Oh,
Mm,
is he the O line coach there?
yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. I wonder what happened with Georgia. But yeah, he was Ole Miss's interim head coach when we got rid of Hugh Freeze, and we really struggled when Matt Luke was our head coach. I just don't think he was head coach material. As proof, he's been an offensive line coach for the past couple of years. And they did win a national championship at Georgia with him. But yeah, I think it's interesting kind of how he's made his coaching round since leaving Ole Miss. I kind of forgot about him and then started seeing him pop up. He was really successful at Georgia. I don't know when he got to Clemson, but that's neat. So yeah, I've got Alabama winning against Ohio State. You've got Georgia beating Alabama.
Yep. Both got Bama and the Natty.
Yeah, I really didn't see this coming. I'll be honest with you. When I was looking over the season preview, I really was not positive that Alabama was going to be able to string together enough wins to make the SEC championship. I just feel like there's so many other good teams in the SEC that can make a run. It's like picking a needle from a haystack and like just hoping it's going to be Alabama.
It
It
really just
feels
kind
like
of
that.
depends on how the bracket sets up.
Yeah, I think with my bracket, I actually have them with a really tough path. They have to play Notre Dame, Texas, and Georgia and Ohio State. Those are all probably the better teams in the entire college football landscape this year. I think the only harder matchup would probably be instead of Notre Dame either playing OU or Clemson, which I have them already beating OU. So if Alabama were to go through this run and win, they absolutely would be the best team in college football without a doubt. But that's a brutal gauntlet on that side of the bracket. I have them on. The other side was way better. If they were to be playing against an Oregon or an Arizona State or a Georgia Tech, I think they would have probably fared a lot easier on that path. But I feel like we picked probably two of the best teams in college football to win the Natty.
Definitely talent.
Absolutely.
Very
Absolutely. I
this
think
one.
these teams, they may utilize the transfer portal a little bit, but I think they still develop players the right way. I think that's why I'm so confident in them. And Ohio State, too. I lump Ohio State in there with this group of teams. I really feel like Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State are that trifecta right now, and Texas is right there with them of teams that are developing talent, utilizing the transfer portal where they need to fill in little holes in their roster, but getting the right guys and making sure they get who they want. I feel like these teams are doing that, and I think that's going to really show. But I think we could see another two-loss national champion again. Like I think there's a real possibility whoever ends up winning has two losses. So I'm really excited to see how this plays out, and I'm sure I'm going to feel completely differently about mine given a week or two
I'll probably
after
feel
this.
different about it tomorrow.
Yeah, so like we'll do our power rankings and stuff throughout the season, and we'll re-rank things. I mean, this is to be taken with a complete grain of salt. If you look at this and you're judging our feel for the game entirely off of this bracket, we're bozos because we don't know anything. We haven't watched these teams play on the field yet. This is all really off of a feel. So I guess maybe you should judge our feel for the game a little bit off of this. We'll see how it turns out, but I'm just excited to see how these teams perform over the regular season. There's a lot of underdog teams that I think can make a real push too. Might have another Indiana or Arizona State kind of Cinderella run
There'll be
against a tier
somebody that just
somebody.
comes out of nowhere and surprises everybody.
Absolutely. With that volatility we were talking about, I think that's absolutely going to happen. There's no doubt. So moving on, we're going to get into our week 0 matchup that we're going to be visiting this weekend. Mercer is playing a neutral site game against UC Davis. These are two of the top FCS teams from last year playing each other start the season. I think this is going to be a really interesting game. I think FCS teams should get a little more love. So I'm excited. I've never been to an FCS game. I think this talent pool of players doesn't get enough recognition. I watched them play against Alabama, Mercer, and I thought they played a really solid game for what it was worth in Tuscaloosa against a really solid Alabama team. They had some really good plays. They just, when it came down to it, Alabama was way more physical, way more talented, and way better coached. But that's obviously a disparity between the top teams in the country versus FCS teams. Well, I still think this game has a lot to offer. I'm just excited for college football, and I can't wait to get into this matchup. Landon, I think you've kind of broken this down. So do you kind of want to give a little bit of a preview for this?
So Mercer's starting quarterback returns. He only appeared in 4 games last year because of an injury, but another guy took over and put up pretty good numbers and actually transferred to Oklahoma in the spring portal window. But they did get a couple transfers in from UTEP and Purdue to compete, so a little bit of a quarterback battle going on over there. It'll probably end up being the starter at the beginning of last year that comes out on top of that, but I haven't heard much about that. They did lose a 1,000-yard running back from last year.
I got to watch him play against Alabama. He had some really good plays. He did get absolutely walloped and he fumbled one time. I think Alabama housed it on him, but he had a couple really tough runs against that team, so he was really solid for them. I think he was all conference maybe.
He was, yeah.
He was really good. So looking forward to watching him play.
But they do have their number 2 back and an all-conference player transferred in from Charleston Southern. So they should be decent at running back again. Maybe not the production of last season, but they should have a solid run game, and that's kind of what this team relies on first. So wide receivers, they actually lost their number 1 guy from a season ago. But a player to watch out for is Braden Smith, electric return man. He should have a bigger role in the wide receiver core this year. So watch out for him. Top to bottom, they have a solid wide receiver core. But it's just going to be a matter of whoever comes out on top of that quarterback battle. Can they get the ball to them? And with this being a run first team, really being able to establish that run game. And that's really going to depend on the offensive line, who lost their top 3 starters from a season ago. But they did get some solid transfers in the portal, so we'll have to see how that gels. But really, the question mark of this offense is the offensive line. And with this being a team that relies on the run pretty heavily in first, that'll be something to watch out for in this game, how the offensive line performs. So defensively, they lost a good bit, lost 9 of their top 12 tacklers from a season ago. But they do have a very good guy coming back on the defensive line. Andrew Zock was a true freshman a season ago, 14 and a half tackles for loss.
That's a monster. That's a monster season for a true freshman.
Yeah, obviously huge to be able to keep a guy like that around. I'm surprised he didn't jump to like a Power 4 school after a season like that
Yeah.
as a true freshman. Biggest question marks are on the linebacker core. They lost a lot from a season ago, but they did get some solid transfers there, and they do have a pretty experienced secondary. So this should be a solid defense. Obviously, some question marks with transfers, but Mercer's a team that prides itself on defense. So I expect a solid unit. Maybe not quite as good as last season, but they should have a solid offense overall. Not sure if they're going to be as good as last year. This was a very good team a season ago. I think they could fall a little bit, but that's thoughts about Mercer. So moving over to UC Davis. Quarterback room for UC Davis has 4 3 stars in it, all supposedly competing for the job. They do have a 6 year guy in there, Grant Harper, but he's had pretty limited play time throughout his career. So not sure if it's going to be him or maybe one of the younger guys. They're all talented guys, obviously, especially at the FCS level, being 3 stars. But not sure who's going to come out of that. Probably would be the 6 year dude just because of experience. That's what I would expect. But we'll see who winds up coming out of that. They did lose their top running back from a season ago, and they're going to be asking a lot of their number 2 from last year, Mateo Perez. Really need him to step up, take control as the running back. That's really the main question on this offense. Tight end and wide receivers are pretty solid. Tight end coming back, all conference tight end Winston Williams. He should be a big piece of this offense this year. They should be getting the ball to him a lot. And then wide receivers, they do have their leading wide receiver back, Samuel Gabate Jr. So that's a guy to watch out for. This should be a pretty explosive offense, but replacing their quarterback from a season ago, that was very good. I believe he was an all conference player. That's going to be tough, but with all the talent in the quarterback room, surely whoever comes out of that battle will be pretty solid. Offensive line, their top 4 guys return, so they should be solid there. This should be a pretty good, well rounded offense. Defensively, they lose 13 of their top 15 tacklers from a season ago, but they did get 2 Ivy League all conference players transferring in on the defensive line. They have a couple brothers, one that plays linebacker and one that plays safety that were all conference a season ago, so that should be a pretty good duo there. They did get 2 FBS transfers to the secondary, and actually their other safety that they have besides the duo brothers is all conference as well. So a lot of star power on this defense, but it's really just going to be those other players, more of their depth players that are kind of a question mark. We'll see how this new defense gels, but that's how UC Davis is looking roster wise.
Yeah, I like what you were pointing out about the offensive lines for these two teams. I think that's going to probably play the biggest part in this game because you got so much roster turnover, which is one thing people kind of forget about. Is even the FCS deals with roster turnover via the transfer portal, but these offensive lines are two very different situations. You got UC Davis's offensive line returning 4 starters, which is almost a whole unit. Assuming they probably brought some other guys in, they've probably got a decent rotation in offensive line, which is going to help them a lot. Replacing that running back Larson, he was an absolute stud for them. Watched him play against Cal. He had some really tough runs. They're going to miss him a lot, but if their second guy can step up to the plate, their offensive line is going to be able to pave the way for him. Mercer, I think, is going to have a strong rushing attack like usual, but replacing as many starters they are on the offensive line, I think that's probably going to be the 2 position groups that we're going to want to watch in that matchup this weekend is to see how the offensive lines perform. At this level of football, having a good offensive line is a huge advantage. It's huge because quarterback play is about as good at this level on these teams as you can get. They're going to have probably the better quarterbacks in the FCS. Not the best, but they're going to be up there. So, how good can this offensive line be for these teams to be able to elevate their quarterback as much as possible? I'm really excited to see how these two teams gel together on a roster. Kind of looking at how they utilize the portal. They're recruiting all these low end 2 and 3 star guys out of high school, but going into the transfer portal and being able to pull guys from the level above them in Division One, that's a huge addition for them. Those are big gets. That's like the equivalent of I don't know, Northwestern getting a 4 or 5 star in a recruiting class or in the transfer portal. Like that's a big addition for them. One FBS player moving down to an FCS team, that's a solid addition. So I think it's cool that we're getting to go and preview a game like this. Now, obviously, we're not going to go to an FCS game every week. That's not the goal. We love college football, so we're going to go to this game and we're going to give these guys some love and we're going to just experience week 0 for what it's got. And that's this matchup, Mercer playing UC Davis. We're going to enjoy it. We're going to rate our experience. We're going to talk about it. next week after we finished our time there. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm just ready for football to start back. So this will be our week 0 game, and that is the preview for it.
So who do you favor in this matchup, you think?
I I've watched Mercer play more football, so I'm gonna probably be a little more biased towards them just because I've seen more from them. I think what you pointed out with the offensive line makes me feel a little more confident about UC Davis. So if I had to make a judgment pick right now, I'd probably pick Mercer, but I absolutely see a scenario where UC Davis ends up being the better team because they return some all conference guys on defense and their O line holds up better. But I liked how Mercer played last year. I think they had some really good games, and I think you can even take a lot from that game they played against Alabama. Even though they lost in a blowout in Tuscaloosa, they had some really cool plays. They had some really good drives, and I don't know if anybody saw this, but their wide receiver had an insane one-handed catch and double coverage for a touchdown against Alabama. It might have been their only score of the game, but you should definitely go look that up if you're listening to this. That was probably one of the best plays in college football last season that no one's talking about. But yeah, I probably would take Mercer. Long story short.
I'm gonna go with UC Davis.
Okay. All right. So we have two different teams to root for then.
Yeah, so roster wise, I feel like UC Davis, more proven, deeper, more talented. The Big Sky Conference is better than the SoCon. And I feel like both these teams will probably be in similar places in their conference, probably in the 2 to 4 spot in their conference. So with the Big Sky being better and just UC Davis overall, in my opinion, having more roster talent, I think they'll win this game.
I'm really excited about this. I think this is going to be a fun game. Looking forward to the D1 games that we start getting to go to later in the season. Going to see Mississippi State and Southern Miss to open the season week 1 will be really fun. But we're going to kick it off with an FCS game, do it a little bit different. So let's get into the rest of our week 0 game predictions. Do you want to go ahead and do yours, Landon?
Yeah, so first we got Iowa State taking on Kansas State in Ireland. Both good teams. I expect solid seasons out of both of them. Iowa State, I think, might be a little bit down, but I think Kansas State gets this one. They've been a little more consistent over the course of the last decade. I just trust them a little bit more in kind of a weird game like this. So I think they get this win here.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna pick Iowa State here. I feel a lot better with Rocco Beck than I do Avery Johnson. I just don't think that missing their top 2 receivers at Iowa State's going to be that big of an impact. I'm sure they'll find some other weapons. And Carson Hansen at running back is going to be a solid plug and play guy. They got Abu Sama. He's also a really good guy running back they've got. So they got depth at that position. I'm looking forward to watching this team play. I just don't really feel high on Kansas State. I have seen some other people put them in the playoff conversation, which I think is a little outrageous. But I'll probably take Iowa State in this game.
All right, so I have a feeling we're going to have the same opinion about this one. Idaho State goes to UNLV. Dan Mullen's first game at UNLV. Not a ton to say. Idaho State, they're not a great FCS team. This should just be a glorified scrimmage for UNLV. But it'll be cool to get to see how they're looking to start off the year with
Yeah,
all the new additions.
absolutely. I think it'll be really interesting to see how all those position battles play out. And all those guys I was talking about earlier that I'm kind of high on, that people have been kind of not really paying attention to all those additions that UNLV's had in the transfer portal. A lot of guys that are slept on who haven't really had a kickstart to their career that they were expecting. See if Dan Mullen can pick up this team. I feel like it's kind of like the modern day EMCC, East Mississippi Community College, for those of you who don't know. Like, they kind of took a bunch of rejects. We'll see if they can kind of develop into that characteristic during the season. They could be really fun to watch if they do that. So we'll see how that pans out for them. But easy win right there for UNLV, I think.
This one's a little bit interesting. Fresno State travels to Kansas.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting game. I'm really high on Kansas as far as Kansas is concerned. I don't think they'll be a 10 or 11 win team, but they have a potential to win 9 games. So I don't think they'll slip up here necessarily and lose, but I think this will probably be one of those games they look back on and they're very happy they escaped with a close win.
I think it'll probably be a little too close for comfort for them, but yeah, they probably win this game by 10 to 14 points.
Yeah, I feel comfortable in that area for sure for Kansas. I think Jalen Daniels will probably have a slow start, but I think he'll show at the end of the game, closing out third, fourth quarter, what he still brings to the table.
And Fresno gave Michigan all they wanted last year.
Yeah, I remember that game.
Obviously, a very bad quarterback
Mikey
situation
Keene
for
was
Michigan.
playing there, right?
Yeah, now he's in Michigan.
Now he's at Michigan.
They
Yeah.
have EJ Warner now.
Oh man, yeah, that's gonna be interesting. He's been around for a little while. We'll see if he sticks. Hopefully, he can have a good season at Fresno to finish out his career.
So next game, big Conference USA game in Week 0. Sam Houston traveling to Western Kentucky.
Yeah, I like Western Kentucky. I feel like they usually have a pretty high-powered offense. I don't know what their team looks like this year. I haven't really spent much time looking at their roster, but I usually feel pretty good with the Hilltoppers having a pretty solid offense. So I probably take them to win this game.
Yeah, they're always a consistent team in the Conference USA. And Sam Houston, 10 wins last year, but pretty much their whole team got poached. Their coach went off somewhere else. I can't remember exactly where he went, but he's gone. Roster's going to be completely different. Western Kentucky, proving contender in this conference. I think they win this game relatively easily. A lot of these Conference USA games can be just slugfest, low scoring. Probably like a 27-10 type of game. Western Kentucky wins that one. And then really interesting game for the nightcap. Stanford traveling to Hawaii.
I don't feel good about this for Stanford.
Hawaii favored by 2.5 right now.
That's not a good look for the Cardinals. You really hate to see that. That is, if you had told me like 10 years ago that we'd be previewing a Stanford game and they would be not favored in a game against Hawaii, I would have thought you were crazy. Like 10 years ago, we were in prime Christian McCaffrey era. Like
the fall off has been terrible.
Oh, I mean, I feel so bad for David Shaw and that program falling off when it did. I mean, they had everything going for them in the Pac-12, and they fall off. The Pac-12 falls off, and now here we are. Stanford's a bottom feeder in the ACC, which is crazy to think about. But do not feel good about this game. I think Hawaii absolutely could sneak away with a win.
So I actually have Stanford going winless this season. So
That's crazy.
obviously I'm picking Hawaii. I think I have Hawaii winning like 8 games this year.
I think good. I mean, they've utilized the portal a little bit as well. They've always got homegrown talent that usually ends up being very underplayed and then shows up. People start poaching those guys from them. But yeah, I like Hawaii here for sure. I just feel like Stanford's just got even their good pieces on offense are young guys. You lose top receiver last year in Eli Aomanor. I mean, he was really good. I think that's going to hurt you a ton. He was probably one of the only sole good parts of that team. So I feel pretty good about Hawaii probably taking home a sneaky win here, even though they're favored.
Yeah, I feel like they've been building and getting better under Timmy Chang, and I think this year they kind of break out a little bit. I actually have been getting to 7 wins in the regular season, which, with how they've been recently, is a giant step in the right direction. So I think it starts off with a win against a Stanford team that's going to go 0-12, in my opinion.
I have them going like 3-9. But I see a 2-10 in there, maybe a 1-11. But I feel like 3-9 is probably a safe bet.
Somebody's gonna go 0-12. Somebody's gonna do it.
You're probably right. I mean, we're gonna have a Detroit Lions Browns kind of season in college football at some point. It just is gonna be what team gets poached the most and has the most off-season drama.
All the
Stanford
off-season
has
crap
had
that went down. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a recipe for disaster. Hopefully, the Cardinals fans are bracing for impact right now. I wouldn't want to be a Stanford Cardinals fan this season. It smells like disaster for them. Could be fun for Hawaii, though. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for us. Episode 5 of the Feel for the Game podcast in the books. Getting excited for our game in Montgomery, UC Davis, and Mercer. Should be a lot of fun. Landon, you got any closing remarks for us?
Let's go, Aggies.
All right.
Gonna cook up a parlay with them in it, and hopefully it hits.
Yeah, we'll have to see if that hits. I think at some point we'll probably see a Landon's Line segment in this podcast. I don't know when that's going to show up, but definitely think that could be a fun addition. We'll start throwing some different content in the podcast as we start getting into games. But as of right now, we'll be cooking all that up and watching some football. So that's going to do it. Episode 5.